Well, hello, and welcome everyone. I'm Laura Brandenburg with Bridging the Gap, and we are here today to talk about the selling the value of business analysis. And there has been so much positive momentum and questions and feedback on this topic, and I'm really excited to dive in. But first, I want to know if you can let us know in the chat that you can hear us and you can see us. And I'm going to introduce our guests as well and let us know where you're joining from, because I'm sure we have quite an international group here. So today with me is Adrian Reed. Adrian is a well-known face in the business analyst world. He's the principal consultant at Blackmetric, the editor-in-chief of the BA Digest, and also an author and a speaker. And then we have Christina Lovelock. She is the co-author of the BCS book, Delivering Business Analysis, and writes for BA Times, BA Digest, and IT Now magazine. She's active in the BA professional community, attending regularly speaking at national and international conferences. She has led digital transformation and continuous improvement in several public sector organizations, built BA teams from 120 business analysts. That is like huge. And now works as a consultant and a coach. And I'm here with you as your host today, Laura Brandenburg. I'm the founder and CEO of Bridging the Gap. We're an online training company focused on teaching practical skill sets that help business analysts thrive in the real world. So hello, Brenda, LinkedIn user Evagina. Thank you for letting us know you can hear us. And welcome, Christina and Adrian. Hello.
Hi, Laura. Great to see you.
Oh my goodness. Thank you so much for being here. Super excited about today. So let's start by just diving right in and talking about how we see the value of business analysis. And then we're going to talk about like, how do we actually sell and position the value? But first, like, what is the value of the BA? And while we're doing that, I'm going to just share a prompt. If you could also let us know in the chat, like, what's the number one challenge that you face when it comes to selling your value? And these are some things that maybe we can bring into the conversation as well. And we'd love to address your specific concerns. But Adrian, do you want to kick us off with like, when you think about the value of a business analyst, how do you talk about it and speak about it? Yeah.
It's a really good question, and it's a surprisingly tough one to answer. But I think for me, there's got to be something about business analysis is about helping people make things better for people, right? And I know that sounds really abstract, but think about everything we do, right? Maybe we might be improving a process or improving that process probably so it's better for the people that use it, but also there's some benefit for the people that interact with it and the benefit for the people who actually run it. So I think for me, one of the benefits is we help people make things better for people. It's a people profession.
It is for sure. Christina, how about you?
So for me, the heart of business analysis is about informed decision making. And we can do that at all kinds of levels in our organizations. We can do it at a very detailed level about the configuration settings that we need within a particular IT system, or we can do it at a much higher level around the kind of direction of the organization and how we're going to innovate or how we're going to drive efficiencies. So if we pitch business analysis as being a role that's about informed decision making, I think that appeals to different people within our organizations. It appeals to leaders, but it also appeals to people who are detail oriented.
Yeah, and actually just springboarding from that, because I completely agree. And I think another thing that sort of connects the ideas that we've both come up with there is like understanding the situation and solving the right problem, and then solving the problem right. Because so often organizations go off on tangents because there's not that informed decision making that Tina was talking about. So yeah, it's an interesting role.
For sure. And I mean, when I was thinking about this, one of the things I wanted to add to the conversation, which is really implied by what you both said, but like how much time we save all people in the organization, right? So like there's the value that's created on the positive side, but also the time we save of people not working on the wrong thing or kind of going off on tangents, or like when we're really at our best, the effort of the project team is really potent and focused and towards the problem that needs to be solved, as well as even the work within the business stakeholder community. So I think just that time savings factor often is something pretty tangible to take away too. Yeah.
I'm interested to see what our audience come up with in terms of their challenges. I
Yeah.
suspect there's going to be a challenge around not feeling seen by particularly senior leaders in the organisation. But I also suspect that a lot of people are waiting to be asked. And actually, if you send somebody senior an email and saying, I'd love to get 5 minutes with you to tell you about the value of my team and what we do, mostly people say yes to that kind of thing. Leaders don't say no to that. So I think we need to be a bit more proactive in getting that message out.
Yeah, let me just kind of share a bit about a few of the things that we've seen. So Rachel says just people understanding what business analysis is even. So that speaks to your point. Trying to describe what a BA does. Comment for you, Adrian. This is the third time I've seen Adrian today. He's a busy person. I also hope that you have gotten some sleep today. Whoever's listening, some of you have got a follower fan there.
Thank you.
Yeah, and Brian says, I was recently asked to define the value of a BA, and I was stumped because BAs do so much. I think that's a really kind of a cool point too. It's like, it's not because we do so little, it's because there's actually so many ways we could go with that conversation. Yeah. Let's see, Evgenia, to customers, it seems that BAs do not produce tangible results, unlike engineers. And also people think they can do the BA job themselves. I think that's like a big one there. Do you want, either of you want to highlight anything about that?
Yeah, I'd like to come in there because I think that that's such a good point. And there was a senior leader, one of the many I've been fortunate to work with, who really got business analysis. And one of the things that he described business analysis as, which has always stuck with me, is it's like a form of glue. And he said the thing about glue is when it's working well, you don't see it.
Yeah.
It's when the glue's not there that everything kind of falls apart. And I think this comes to part of the value challenge that we have, is that sometimes we're invisible. And that kind of comes back to Tina's point, which is, I think as a community, we need to be more bold about saying, do you know what, that thing that worked really well, yes, it was a team sport and success is always a team sport. But do you know what? One of the reasons it worked really well was because we had a BA there, pre-project, we had a problem statement. And yeah, then we went in and we did Agile and we did Scrum, but actually we did all this work up front. And I think sometimes actually being bold enough to say, you know, we moved the needle there, I think it's not in our nature, I don't think, for many BAs, but I think it's something we need to, as a community, get better at doing. Yeah,
and you know, one of the things we wanted to make sure to talk about is how, you know, in our community, we know all of this, like within our community of BAs, but sometimes it feels like we're in an echo chamber, right? Or like we don't even realize we're in an echo chamber. And so we're all like patting each other on the back and like, yes, we're amazing, we're so important, we're so valuable. But like the work is really to get that message out more so than like, it's important to have that camaraderie, obviously, as a profession, but the real work is like, how do we get that message out into the world? So do you, either of you have thoughts on that specifically, of like, how do we start to showcase that? I think you started to go there, Adrian, with like, stand up and say, like, this project had a business analyst. Yeah.
I also think it's about the communities that we speak to. So it's really easy to always speak to the business analysis community. But we can also work with some of our colleagues. So we probably work closely with developers, testers, project and product managers, but also senior leaders. What are the communities that they're part of and the events that they go to? And can we go with them and talk jointly about how we've worked together, how we've collaborated, and how different roles work really well together, and how business analysis is helping them do their roles better?
Yeah, I agree. And I think that I think it's interesting. I think that what we need to do individually and as a community is align what we do to stuff that people care about, right? And this is probably gonna some people might disagree with what I'm about to say, but I don't think anyone particularly cares about user stories. Like, I mean, they care, but they don't just like you. That's just an artifact. That user story is a mechanism to get them somewhere. You know, it's a bit like if you were having medical treatment and someone issued you with an appointment letter. Well, the appointment letter's fine, but it hasn't cured you. It might be a step on the way to curing you. And I think the more we can understand what the different stakeholders value, and they're going to be different things, because an exec stakeholder values a different thing than a user usually, and we can say to the user, well, actually, look, if you give me some time, if you let me observe you, I can make sure that whatever replaces the application you use now, it gets out of your way, and and it really fits in with your workflow. To the exec, it's going to be more like, do you know what? I can make sure that we save you money in a way that fits with your strategy and is delivered at pace. So I think there's an element of selling in this. It really is. We need to not be shy about that and actually sell. Sell what we do.
And we also need our satisfied customers to be advocating on our behalf. So most business analysis teams that operate within an organisation have regular customers, teams or projects that they've worked with really successfully, and getting them to give us case studies or to advocate for us in the rooms that they're in is really powerful as well. So it's not just us selling our services, it's the people who have benefited from working with us that are saying why it helped them and why it was beneficial to them. And we don't do things, for example, like customer satisfaction surveys very well. How effective is the business analysis service that you're receiving? Were the artifacts that you received what you were expected? Were they useful? Did you use them? Were they timely? And I think if we get into that mindset of all of our stakeholders are customers of our BA service, then it's easier to ask for feedback and think about it in terms of continuous service improvement and how we're going to make sure that that service is offering the most value to the organisation.
So, Christina, when you said having other people within the organization advocate on our behalf, I think that's really powerful. And I mean, I imagine in your work building a 120-person team that you were like, how did you make that happen practically? Like, did you go ask people to do something specific, or like, what did that look like? Like, what action that people could take around that?
So that team started off as about 5 people, and we worked on one programme of work. And the work that we did on that programme was recognised as really successful, and we got made into a central team which worked on a whole load of different projects and programmes and grew to about 25 people. And then 2 different organisations merged, and again we made the decision to centralise all of the business analysis activity that was happening on a wide range of projects and programmes, and so I was able to lead that as head of profession. So it was lots of individual projects and programmes recognising the value of business analysis, hiring business analysts, and then we were able to bring in a layer of kind of professionalism into that and consistency across all business analysis within the organisation.
Yeah, that's pretty phenomenal. So it's like, it is at that project level, right? So I think sometimes people can get frozen of thinking like it has to be something extra, right? But if you think about how can you sell within like the project that you're working on today, the value that you're bringing on that project, and just start talking from there, and then like that will lead to more opportunities.
I mean, just try and be the person that when you arrive somewhere in a physical or virtual room, people are like, "Oh, thank goodness you're here." I mean, we're so glad that you're now on this project. We're glad that you're here, and I think trying to bring that mindset to every piece of work that we're involved in, that we want people to want us there, really helps people see our value.
Yeah.
Do you know what? I'm just going to check if it's actually it is. So I have a book. I thought it was behind me. So it might. I've talked about this when I've been on sessions before, but it's a book called The Accidental Salesperson by Chris Liddell. And now it is about sales and selling, but you can see how much I like it by the number of sticky tabs I have on it. And one of the things which I really took from this book is he's talking about sales, not business analysis, but he talks about different levels of conversation from level 1 to 4. So if you're a salesperson, a level 1 conversation might look like, "Hi, what's the price for a Canon inkjet printer?" Right? It's all about functions and price. Whereas a level 4 conversation is like, "We're looking to replace the 150 of our printers in our corporate head office. We're not sure whether we're going to buy, whether we're going to rent, whether we're going to have them as a service. Can you help us?" And I think there's a similarity in business analysis, because at level 1, it might be like, "Okay, we want 2 FTE BAs for 20 days. You're a resource. You're a body type of thing." And at the other end of the spectrum, it's like a trusted advisor. And the reason I think this is interesting is if you imagine but there is that spectrum from 1 to 4. You can think, where am I? Am I just a resource to these people who, and they don't really care? They just want someone with a pulse. Or am I a trusted advisor, or am I somewhere in between? And how can I get between those different steps? Now, you might not always be able to get to 4, but if you can get from 1 to 2, it's a significant achievement. And that's, I've found that really useful. And there's like a matrix in here, which he uses, and I've created an adaptive version of where you can work out where you are. But yeah, so but stuff from the world of sales is genuinely useful, I find.
Well, I think we're all salespeople, right? Like so many of us probably got into business analysis partly because we didn't want to be salespeople, but like we are still salespeople. And we're all in, like, when it comes to our individual careers, we're salespeople, or when it comes to our profession, like we need to be selling the value of that. That's just part of being a professional and having a growing and thriving career, for sure. Thank you for that. So Rachel brought up a question that I know came up from one of our early commenters as well about an elevator pitch. I feel like we've talked about kind of the user-focused elevator pitch and maybe an executive-focused elevator pitch, but I just wanted to check in if there was anything else about the elevator pitch that either of you wanted to share before we kind of move on to our next topic. This is a big one.
For me, it's about enabling informed decision making, and I think that that really appeals to all of the different customers and all of the different levels of stakeholder that we work with, because data-driven decision making is a phrase that gets bandied a lot in organizations, but not many organizations are actually data-driven in their decision making. So I think informed decision making is not quite as blunt an instrument as data-driven decision making. It means that we're going to find everybody whose perspective we need to reflect. It means that we're going to think about all the impacts of a change that's going to be made. And that idea of informed decision making, I think, really resonates with a wide range of our stakeholders.
Yeah, I agree. I think springboarding from that as well, I think there's definitely different elevator pitches for different groups of people. And I think that I remember hearing once that something that venture capitalists ask when they're being pitched at a new product in like Silicon Valley or whatever is, okay, is this like a vitamin pill, or is it like a painkiller? And what they want to hear is it's a painkiller, because you know you're much more likely, like everyone has aspirin in their house probably, or paracetamol, or whatever you have in, you know, whatever local market you're in. But taking vitamins, like that's not necessarily where people's heads going to be at. So I think if we can align what we do to what people care about and where their pain points are, is even more important than saying, and we can make the world a better place. You know, we can solve your pain, and we can make the world a better place.
Right. And I think some of those pains might be like wasted time, longer deadlines that are necessary, right? Like churn and rework. So kind of leaning into the things that happen when good business analysis is not part of the project.
Exactly.
And I just want to come back to that question about can't people just do business analysis themselves? Well, in some cases, yes. And I think we actually need to be supporting people to do that. We shouldn't try and hoard business analysis and our techniques to ourselves and try and prevent other people from using them. We actually want to encourage and empower people to use our range of techniques correctly in their situation. So I think there's something we can do about being supportive there. And one of the most successful things that I've done in a previous organisation is I used to run a one-day internal introduction to business analysis, which was great because I was getting that business analysis thinking out to a wide range of stakeholders in the organisation. And I was also creating a pipeline of people to potentially recruit from at the times that we had roles. So it's not something that every team was offering as well. So it was a development opportunity that a lot of people took up at different levels. So I don't think we should be too scornful about people trying to do their own business analysis. I think we should try and support them to do that. But also recognising that if, for example, we're going to say, let's get rid of business analysts and developers can do their own business analysis, well, then we're going to need 20 or 50% more developers because they're going to be spending their time doing business analysis. And which of those things is a more cost-effective decision?
That's a great point. Yeah, I think like if we hoard something, like we keep it safe, but actually the more we share it, the more people see the value of it. Right. So one of the other pieces we wanted to talk about here, this came up beforehand, was the label of business analysis. And I know you both have some very specific, powerful thoughts on this, but like, does the title that we have dilute our value? Like, is there a point that we might be thinking about a rebrand of the title or the role? Who wants to start and jump in on that one?
I think you should start, Tina.
So one thing I hate is when I see too many prefixes on the word business analyst. So I hate it when I see Dynamics business analyst or Salesforce business analyst, because once you've decided the person is only going to work on Salesforce, then they're not really doing a holistic role anymore. They're not really doing business analysis. So I don't think we should constrain people by their technology with their job titles. But I do think there's a whole broad range of people with all different job titles who are doing business analysis very successfully. So I don't think we should be too inward looking and say only business analysts can do business analysis. We want to be thinking that actually whatever role I move to in my career, I'm doing it with a business analysis mindset and bringing my tools and techniques with me, and that I'm encouraging the community around me to use those tools and techniques as well. Adrian.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think that title matters much less to people outside of the change community than we think it does. And I know Oki in the comments has asked me not to use analogies. Sorry, Oki, I didn't know you were going to be here. But I'm going to use analogies. And
Adrian, it's part of your brand. That's just you were writing by analogy when we worked together like 12 years ago.
Yeah. And Oki, I'd be very happy to have a one-on-one conversation with you and explain all the analogies, and we can have a conversation about that. But like, I don't think people care about whether you're a business analyst or whatever. So, for example, imagine you have a problem with your eye and you can't see, or your vision goes. There's a technical difference, I believe, between an optician, an optometrist, and an ophthalmologist. But you don't care. You just want your eyes fixed, right? And I think this is it. Like, people want delivered change. Do they care whether they need a business architect, a business analyst, a project manager, a product owner? No, they just want delivered change. So I think we need to be less precious about the title and more focused on the outcomes that we deliver for stakeholders, and talk about the outcomes rather than the title. I think the title gives us identity within the BA community, and I think that's powerful because it binds us all together. But outside of that, I think it's less important.
Sure, other professionals.
I'm not hearing either of you say we need a new title for the role, though. Right? Like that we need a rebrand to somehow solve this value problem.
But that's interesting, isn't it? Because I see rebrand and title as two slightly different things. They overlap, but I don't think we need a new title necessarily. We possibly do need a rebrand, but I think that rebrand is how we talk about what we do. I think the title is secondary. You can rebrand a chocolate bar. It's still a chocolate bar, right? Whether or not someone buys it, but changing the name might make a difference. But actually, it's how the benefit of that chocolate bar is conveyed. And I think the same is true with business analysis. It's about how we talk about the value, and that's the bit of rebrand that I think we need.
Right. And part of this, just to I think that gives us a segue into the next thing we wanted to talk about, which is part of the challenge is that we do work with so many different roles, right? The BA role both overlaps and collaborates with product managers, project managers, product owners, technical leads, the list. And those people could be doing business analysis, or they could be leaning on us for business analysis. We could be co-collaborating on business analysis. So how do we navigate this world in which we're both positioning our own value and collaborating with other people who are in tightly related roles that maybe have a little bit more oomph to them, or seem like they have an oomph for them, or maybe that's just our own mind, our own head trash in a way that we think these other titles have more oomph to them, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think definitely business analysts are in turf wars in their organisations with roles that they perceive to be new interlopers. Yeah, user researcher is one that I hear a lot of grumbling about, but also product owners and product managers. And there's a lack of clarity, and that overlap is seen as a bad thing rather than an opportunity to collaborate. And I think one way that we can clarify it for ourselves and our stakeholders is to go to kind of define our services, set our stall out. What do we do as business analysts? So if there's a dedicated test team in the organisation and people have that, then maybe we're going to be less involved in user acceptance testing compared to an organisation that doesn't have dedicated test resources. So thinking about the other roles that exist within our organisation, where does that mean we need to emphasise our skills and the value that we offer the organisation? That doesn't mean that we stop doing things that are core to the BA role. And in fact, the same services might appear on the service catalogue of multiple professionals. Business analysis and business architecture being one, for example, where there's quite a level of overlap, might be doing the same types of things applied at different levels. So clarifying what it is that we have on offer so that our stakeholders have a kind of menu that we say, these are the types of things that we do. And if you want something that's not on the menu, come and talk to us because we might be able to accommodate it. We're going to say yes to some of those things and we're going to say no to some of them. But it's thinking about the environment we're in and where we see those overlaps as opportunities to collaborate, not turf wars.
Yeah, I agree. I think it is the overlap. I think the overlapping areas for me are the really exciting areas because they're the areas where I know I've learned a lot from working with user experience professionals, for example. Now, am I a UX professional? Well, there are elements of it I know, but I'm not a UX professional. There are people who've properly studied and done this. So I think it is that looking for areas of collaboration, because then both parties can usually learn, and that's a really good place to be when we're getting the message about business analysis out. And I've found sometimes in that situation, and it goes back to what Tina was saying about getting advocates to talk about business analysis. You find that you work with a professional, they now get business analysis, and they're like, wow. Well, I'm going to make sure I've got a business analyst on all of my projects because we can work really well together. So I think there is that real opportunity too.
Yeah. And that resonates. One of the questions we had was from Christine about how do you concisely tie your value to the other titles in the company that was related to this. And it reminds me, I worked in a lot of companies that had product managers because we were doing customer facing product type work. And I would be like, I will help navigate the aspect of making sure the requirements are clear enough for software development so that you can work on going to market and marketing and all of those. And also often handled a lot of the operational pieces, like the back end. What did customer service need, for example, in order to support this product that the product manager, quite frankly, wasn't a great stakeholder for and didn't want to even have to think about. But I would kind of look at the implications of what we were doing and bring that to. So just being able to talk again to those roles and give the value in their context is a key point. Christina, there was something you shared when we pre-met about this that I just really wanted to bring attention to here. And you talked about how also these other roles, we have this perception, right, that they have a stronger body of knowledge or awareness than we do, but that maybe they actually don't. Is there anything you want to bring forward there?
I think what I actually said was that they're making themselves seem a lot sexier than business analysis.
I don't want to put that word in your mouth on a live stream. Yes,
I know. And I think some professions, they talk about meetups and this kind of thing, and just there's a whole aura of this is exciting, this is innovative, this is a place to be. And I think we can learn things from those professions, how we can appeal to a wider audience, how we can make the community that we've got welcoming and seem interesting for people who are on the outside of it. So I don't think business analysts are necessarily thinking, they've got like really interesting tools and techniques that we haven't got access to, because we're quite happy to steal and borrow and reuse tools and techniques, repurpose techniques from other professions. We do that all the time. But I think there is a perception that it's kind of trendy. It's more interesting to be a user researcher or a product manager. So we need to try and bring that energy and that innovation to business analysis. So we need to learn from our colleagues. What are they doing to be so appealing?
Very cool.
Yeah, I don't think I can add anything to what Tina said there. I think that's it, and I think it is. I think it comes back to the fact that it's a bit of a perception problem. There's all this value that we know. Everyone who's listening to this probably knows there's all this value we can bring, but there's a perception, and the challenge that we have is how we bridge that gap. And as Tina says, there are other professions that seem to have it in spades.
I think one thing that BAs are often doing, kind of unconsciously, is using restraining language. We're the people that are saying, hang on a minute, and we need to take a step back. When everybody else on the project is interested in forward momentum and making progress, if we use that restraining language, we seem like the people who are saying no, and therefore people are going to try and work around us. So we need to find a way to get our point across without trying to say words like slow down, step back, think about the bigger picture, all these things that are very tempting to say. We need to say, okay, if we want to do that, then what's the next best step? Or how do we make sure we involve these people, rather than slow down because we haven't thought about X, Y, and Z. So that's something, a kind of language switch that I think VAs need to think about.
I think that's a really good point, and I think there's definitely something in giving people options as well. So it's the sort of, okay, right, so you want to do X, and in the back of your mind you're thinking that's absolutely ridiculous. Like, when your inner monologue says that's a crazy waste of money. So okay, we could do that, but you're probably aware there's a few risks associated with that. But actually, we could park that just for like 2 days. I'll do a really quick discovery piece of work, which will give you the peace of mind to know that that's the right thing to do. And then what we can do is we can really run into it. We can deliver it at pace, because at the moment everyone's going to be a bit. So sometimes it is about giving those options and I guess it's that element of reminding people that actually, we're there to help support people make those decisions. We're not there to get in the way or take those decisions away. It comes back to, as Tina was saying, informed decision making.
Yeah, I want to share this comment here that just came through because I think it might help us. Oh, sorry, it kind of goes in front of your head there.
That way, I'll hide behind it.
Yeah, that is so true, Christina. I think we're often trying to be the voice of reason and caution when everyone else is carried away with the excitement and the buzz of the project, and we see the possible risks, issues, and challenges, and can be the naysayers. So I think people are landing with that point. And it's a great segue to this idea of imposter syndrome too, that I know we wanted to bring into this, because I think as we're talking about being the person who would say, I'll go do a 2-day discovery piece of work to help make a decision, or I just need things to slow down, right? Like that's a lot where our own sense of seeing our value and standing in the value of the work we do can sometimes come up. And kind of hold us back, right? And shift those perceptions. If we're nervous about what we can actually achieve in a day or two, then we're projecting that nervousness on others, right? And that contributes to the whole cycle. So I just want to kind of open that up for some discussion too. What's the role of imposter syndrome that you see in this whole idea of selling our value as a BA? Christina, do you want to dive in first on that one?
So I have really changed my mind about imposter syndrome, because when I first heard about it, it was like a light bulb moment. Yeah, I've been experiencing that my whole life. I can totally relate to it. Always felt that I'm out of my depth, going to get found out, shouldn't be here. All of those kinds of feelings that are so prevalent across so many people, and particularly in business analysis, it seems. But I've been thinking about it more and more in recent months, and I think what labeling it imposter syndrome does is says the problem is with you. That's your attitude, that's your confidence, just be more something else, be less this, get a mentor, that'll solve all of your problems. But actually, a lot of what imposter syndrome is the systems and how the systems are not set up for everybody to succeed or to feel comfortable in the situations that they find themselves in. So I think imposter syndrome has kind of taken some of the emphasis away from organisations needing to sort themselves out and making sure that they are making everybody's voice heard. They are making every person feel welcome and that they're doing a good job and they're contributing. So I think all this talk about imposter syndrome is a bit of a get out of jail free card for organisations, because they can kind of sit back and say, well, we had a seminar about imposter syndrome and that, you know, the people that feel that need to now sort themselves out, and not have any organisational level reflection that says we need to change so that that's not such a big issue for our employees.
I mean, it's interesting because I've not thought about it from that perspective before, but I think what Tina is saying is absolutely spot on. And I think it is about that, you know, that the environmental factors, right? It's cultivating that culture or cultivating the conditions that will allow that to happen. And I think that nervousness and the feeling of being a fake is something that a lot of people, a lot of BAs I know feel, right, and which is interesting. And so I think you know, creating a world where there's psychological safety and people can be the people that they want to be, and people don't feel that is what we should aspire to, and that's I think that's a really thoughtful position you've got there, Tina. I'd not thought about it that way before.
Yeah, and I think there's like room for both though as well, right? Because there are in our current world, hopefully not always, but we have systemic issues that create judgments and perceptions. And it's so interesting in this context of value, like we are in an organization, like we are in a growth oriented, get things done, push things forward. Most of the companies are like that, right? We don't have a lot of companies that are like disciplined of informed decision making. Right. So like the BA value and the culture of the company might sometimes be in conflict. And that can add to that feeling of, wait, I'm like doing the wrong thing. Not that I'm really doing the wrong thing, but I'm doing the thing that maybe the lead or the manager or the executive doesn't actually want, because they just want to see through for the next, push this thing through until their next 2-year, whatever. Right. So like just recognizing, I think, the environmental factors and the personal factors in that conflict can be really important.
The thing that I do like about imposter syndrome, having kind of trounced it massively, is that it gives us an opportunity to talk about the fact that most people are making it up most of the time. And we don't talk about that. So everybody thinks that everyone else has got their whole life and career sorted, and it's just them that's having all of these kind of dilemmas and worries and crises sometimes. But it's not, and that is just the human condition.
Yeah, I 100%. There was an article I read a while back, literally called "Everyone's Totally Making It Up All of the Time," and once you know that, the world becomes an easier place. And one thing, so you know, I know I get incredibly nervous about lots of things. And Tina, you know, I know we've had conversations. We probably feel similar in certain situations. But I would suspect that a lot of people that see me present and see you, Tina, present would never ever think that we would experience those sorts of things. And you know, I can still remember just about every negative comment anyone's ever put on any kind of feedback form about me. And I suspect, Tina, you're probably similar, right? And so I think that it really does affect everyone. And one of the things that I take from this, which is wider than just business analysis, is it's really important to be kind, because like, you know, you might think that putting a comment on a chat in LinkedIn is, but like actually, you know, that has an impact on a real person. So it's, you know, it's being kind to our stakeholders and each other.
For sure. I just want to share this comment from Artie. It's daunting to enter as a BA with a set of questions and to start analysis when everyone expects you to know everything. That's typical imposter syndrome, even though that's exactly what your role demands. So I think, you know, it's a daunting feeling. This is not a role for somebody without a bit of a thick skin, who can't take criticism and feedback, or even just deal with the fact that other people have big emotions about whatever problem you're trying to solve. And when you were talking, Adrian, what I was thinking about is like this I have my daughter's in 6th grade, so we all, we've been through 6th grade. It's a fun time. It's a girl, not really, but like, coaching her on like a lot of what's happening is probably not about you, right? But I think as adults, we also need to remember, like, it's probably like that whatever that girl's doing, it's like it's actually not about you at all. Everybody is so in their own heads, especially in 6th grade. But I think a lot of us are we're still all in our, that's who we are as human beings. Like we're self-centered beings in a sense. And so everybody in your world, it's like they're noticing a fraction about you of what you're feeling about you. And it can kind of help dispel that sense of overwhelm a little bit as well. And maybe Artie, they're just so grateful for you to ask those questions.
Yeah. And in that previous question, it said, it feels like everyone's expecting you to have the answers. I don't think that is necessarily true. And I think we put a lot of pressure on ourselves. So, if we're honest with ourselves that we don't know the answers and we're not being employed to know the answers, if we knew the answers, we'd be a subject matter expert and not a business analyst, and we wouldn't need to be asking those questions. So kind of embrace the role that we've got, which is about not having knowledge and seeking knowledge. And then maybe that takes the pressure off a little bit.
I think so. I think and having that humility to say I don't know. I don't know, but I'm here to help us find out. And I think like I've worked in many organizations where like people are afraid to say I don't know and would rather answer a different question. Like they'll just answer a different question. And as a BA, you notice that, but most people don't. They've answered a subtly different question that's been asked. And so I think, that's where we start to add value, because we say, oh, hang on a minute, I think there's a miscommunication happening here. And, and how can we help to rectify that? But I do just want to add one thing to this theme, which is that as nervous as you, all of us might feel on the inside, actually often we don't look anywhere near as nervous as we're actually feeling. Anyone who's ever done anything like this, any kind of online type event like this, or has spoken or has delivered training, will know that actually the nerves are what make you prepare. And it's the preparation that makes you, or for me at least, it's the preparation which means you nail it. And the fact you're nailing it means you get the good feedback. So I think there's an element of actually embracing that and feeling it and acknowledging it and then using it as a catalyst to do really good work.
Yeah.
I think that's a great point. And just on that kind of not knowing, when we are asking stakeholders questions they don't know the answer to and they don't want to tell us that they don't know, something that I've noticed that very technical people do is they retreat into greater levels of technical detail in the hopes that you won't follow them down that rabbit hole, in the hopes that your technical limitations will prevent you from asking further questions so that they can kind of put the brakes on something they don't want to talk about. So it's kind of noticing that the ways that the people will avoid a question and avoid saying that they don't know.
Yeah. Like your lack of understanding is like your most powerful tool a lot of times. Like once you learn to trust that you're listening, you're hearing, you're thinking things through. If you're not getting it, there's somebody else in the room that's not getting it. Yeah.
And the number of times that I've asked what does that acronym stand for, and the person using it doesn't know. So don't assume that everybody knows.
And I think that's where intuition is so important as well. When you like, I'm sure we all have this. You're in a workshop and you suddenly get this. I think those two people are using the same words to mean completely different things. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask that person what they mean by that, and then the other person goes, "Oh, but I meant something else." And it's having that intuition is so it's another area where we really, really add value, right? And I suppose intuition is an area that AI doesn't have. So it's what and this is another thing. Of course, I know a different conversation, but certainly no time soon you're going to replace that intuition with AI. I wouldn't have thought.
Yeah, so I want to talk a little bit about the role of professional development in this. But first, I also want to bring attention to this really amazing initiative that you both are doing, because I think it plays into this whole conversation. And this is about the BA School Day, right? And so, and this to me, it's such a great way for BAs to get out of like to practice some of these things, practice their elevator pitch, start teaching, sharing about business analysis in a classroom, and overcome like a lot of imposter syndrome. I feel like I would be nervous to talk about business analysis to a bunch of high schoolers, more so than maybe to a bunch of professionals. So do you want to talk a little bit about that initiative and what's been going on with that? Because I just think it's so amazing. Yeah.
So a little while ago, Adrian and I talked about the different communities within business analysis that we felt were underserved by the current things that were happening, whether it was events, initiatives, information. And we kind of said, well, what could we do that would be positive to help one of these underserved communities? And we realised that a lot of BAs will tell you the story of how they got into business analysis, which is they just fell into it and they didn't know what it was, and then they were doing it and someone said, you're a business analyst now. And a lot of business analysts saying people don't recognise the value of business analysis. And we thought, well, there's a way that we can try and combat both of those things, is by going to people at the earliest point when they're thinking about careers and learning about the world of work and telling them what business analysis is, because then we won't have accidental business analysts and we'll have people that have some awareness of the value and purpose of business analysis. So we decided we were going to aim at young people, even before they're even really thinking about their own careers. And we've had people all over the world going and speaking to children as young as 7 and students as old as kind of 24, 25 at university. So it's been a really exciting thing to be part of. I'll let Adrian elaborate on it a bit more.
Yeah, and I think, and really what we did, this is something we had the idea, we didn't know whether it was going to work. We very quickly put a very minimal website together, and the traction really grew. And people pledged, so we got people to pledge originally that they were going to do this around November last year to coincide with Global BA Day. And, we created some initial resources and other people contributed their resources. And the idea was that the website was just a catalyst. It's down for each individual person or team to go and find a school or college or university, but then perhaps there's some resources on the website that will help them prepare. And yeah, I mean, it just really took on a momentum of its own, and we reached thousands of students. I mean, we know we reached thousands and thousands of students that way.
Yeah.
So if people want to get involved, how do they find out more about it?
Well, the website is still there. It's literally baschool.day, and it will be there for the foreseeable future. The resources are still there. And the great thing is it's self-organized. You can just do it. And one of the things, and Tina came up with this great phrase, which was like, it almost felt like it gave people permission to do it. Mm-hmm. Like they might have wanted to do it, but now there's a badge that they can do it under. And if that's what it provided, then I think that's fantastic. And I can say, having well, in fact, Tina and I went to the same school to do this. It is really that's the most nerve-wracking thing I've done in the last decade, because getting up in front of, well, in fact, 2 groups of school children is pretty scary.
But they ask such great questions, and I know that this initiative, we've reached thousands of children and students, and I know we have inspired some BAs of the future. And yeah, it's a lot of people, we're still getting feedback about it all the time, and a lot of employers are saying it's really brought us closer to the education, the school community. Literally people on every continent, so many different countries got involved, and we were just blown away.
Well, every continent except Antarctica. That's what I worked out from the data, and I think we can call that a success.
For sure. That's awesome. Well, thank you all for making that happen and bringing that to the community, because we're here talking about the things each person can do, but you're also showing these are the kinds of things that we can do. It almost makes me feel like we need a BA employer day or something initiative, right? That's sort of what you were doing for the schools is what we are talking about here, having everybody do for employers. And I think that that's really, really awesome. So we were going to also just talk a little bit about the role of ongoing professional development in the value of business analysis. And like, you know, we're all trainers in some way, shape, or form here. So I think it's hard to have any conversation about this without talking about like where training or professional development or ongoing growth comes in. So Adrian, do you want to start with any thoughts on like, how does this intersect with how we sell our value?
Yeah, you know what? I remember hearing Simon Wardley, who's written some really interesting stuff about a technique called Wardley mapping. But I remember him a while back. He was presenting and he came up with this expression which really resonated with me, which is good practice by definition is past practice. Right? So today's good practice is actually past practice. It's not emerging practice. That's emerging. It's not considered good practice yet necessarily. And one of the things I think is that if, as a practitioner in anything, you're standing still, you're actually falling behind. And that's not to say there's not a core set of techniques that are always going to be useful. Of course there are, right? I'm pretty sure that all three of us know what a use case is and know how to use one, and would still use a use case but they've been around a long time. But there are other techniques that are emerging that are from different disciplines. There are different methods and methodologies, and I do think that it's really imperative that we stay on top of that. But one of the things I find is the vast majority, if not all of the BAs I've ever met, have been amongst the most learning hungry people. Like as a community, we tend to be really hungry for learning, and it doesn't like training is one option, but just attending something like this is a way of professional development. Going and speaking to a school is a form of professional development because you're sharpening your elevator pitch and your presentation skills. Going to a conference, so I think there are so many opportunities out there, everything from free to freemium to paid. And I think that the community's a really rich one for professional development opportunities.
Agreed. Christina, anything you want to add there?
I have interviewed hundreds, probably thousands of business analysts in the last 20 years because I've always had quite a large team and I've always been recruiting for that team. And a question I would regularly ask is, tell me about a professional development activity you've done recently. And you can tell so much about a person from the answer that they give to that, because some people say, well, I've been really busy on my projects, I haven't had a chance to do anything like that. Some people say, well, my employer doesn't have any funding, so it doesn't allow us to do things like that. And I think both of those answers are so reflective of that person's mindset about their own growth and personal and professional development, because it doesn't have to require any investment, and you can read a book or listen to a podcast or read an article in your own time. So you don't need to wait for permission from your employer. You don't even need to wait for funding to be improved. This is a mindset issue, and if you don't have a learning mindset, then you're not going to be the best end of business analysts. You're only ever going to be a kind of good to middling business analysts, because the best business analysts are those ones who want to learn, will spend their free time and in some cases their own money to be able to support their own professional development because it's important to them.
Yeah, and I would agree, just seeing, the transformations that people go through, like often that it's like that confidence that clicks in when you're building on a skill set that even though you might intuitively have it or be really good at what you do, there's this like layer of confidence that comes when now it's like you've read or heard or seen somebody else do it that way. And that positions you to be stronger in your value, ask better questions, like be more out there, right? So like that to me, like to be constantly kind of building yourself up to be stronger and more powerful in your role is just a really critical part of all this. And Adrian, I feel like I cut you off.
I think I agree. And I think this is also an area where those overlaps that we talked about between different disciplines are really important, because that I've found can be a really rewarding area to do some professional development. Not to say that I ever want to be whatever that other role is, but finding out enough about it so I can work better with them. It can be really, really valuable. So it's about, business analysis and the stuff in the adjacent possible, I think, are areas that are really interesting.
Yeah, for sure. I love learning about business concepts. That's where a lot of mine is lately, just business concepts and like, yeah, so many different cool things. And it always comes back to business analysis in some way. All right, so we are kind of towards the top of the hour, and definitely if you have a last minute question you'd like to get in, we're going to each share takeaways. So if we have questions, but I'd love to hear from each of you, how can people learn more about you? And is there anything about you that you wanted to share and make sure people heard about that we haven't yet talked about? So Christina, do you want to go first?
So I'm quite active on LinkedIn. That's the best way to see what I'm up to and to connect with me. I'd be delighted to connect on there for anybody that wants to get in touch.
And yeah, also LinkedIn, please do connect on LinkedIn. I really enjoy conversations. If you've got, do reach out to me on LinkedIn. The other thing, which is completely free, I actually have a hard copy of it back here, but BA Digest, which is a quarterly PDF magazine, which you can get at badigest.link. And it's completely free. It's PDF and it's open access. So you don't even have to log on or anything. And it has an open submission process. So if you ever want to write an article, there's a process for doing that as well. So badigest.link. But yeah, connect with me on LinkedIn. And always look forward to talking to people.
Same with me. I would love to connect with any of you on LinkedIn that we're not part of yet. I can highly recommend the BA Digest. We got a kudos for that in here as
Thanks,
well from Claire. Yeah, and also my website, bridgingthegap.com, that has hyphens in it, has a ton of resources about and videos about business analysis to check out as well. So closing comments, and I feel like this might help us frame them. And sorry to cover you up again here for a moment, Adrian. I'm trying to raise the profile of business analysis within my organization, and I'm organizing awareness sessions of the BA role and guest speakers to BAs to demonstrate the opportunities of collaboration and similarities. During these sessions, I'm also trying to use them as opportunities for professional development. Any suggestions on what works well would be really useful to make these sessions valuable. And that kind of sets us up for like a roundtable and any closing comments around that. So yeah, go for it.
One thing I would say to that is don't necessarily feel that these have to be separate sessions to other things that already exist within the organisation. So if some of those teams and those groups that you want to reach already have some kind of regular team meeting or their own lunch and learn, see how you can slot into what they're doing rather than creating another set of things and kind of hoping that people come along. Go to where the people are.
Yeah, I agree. And I think also one thing that I think is interesting is sometimes there's a perception that if you are sending, say, having someone present about business analysis to another community, that should be a really senior person that's seen it all. And that can be useful. But actually, I think there's real value in getting a whole spectrum of people, including people who are newer to the role. I speak to people who are newer to the role who have such insight and see things from a different perspective. And so I think that there's value in all of those, in all of those perspectives, for sure. But I think that's a great thing that person's doing.
Yeah, I would agree. I think it's just a great takeaway to see the sharing of the BA work in action. And kind of to your point, Adrian, one of the things I wanted to say around imposter syndrome was like focusing on what you can contribute versus like your years of experience, right? And so someone newer to the role might be able to contribute, like how are universities teaching this, or what is some new perspective from a younger generation, and bringing those perspectives in is really important as well. So just that mindset shift of like, what do I have to contribute to this project versus like, how do I stack up against everyone else can be a great shift when you're thinking about your value as well. All right. Well, lots of great kudos on the topic. Anyone else feel like they have a closing thought that they want to share before we sign off for today? We're all good? All right. Well, please connect with Christina and Adrian. Check out the BA Digest and the BA School Initiative. Thank you both so much for being here and sharing your wisdom with the community. I really appreciate you. And I wish you all the best in your endeavors. And thank you all, everyone, for being here and being part of this and your great engagement. It is recorded. It will be on LinkedIn. It will also be on the Bridging the Gap YouTube channel. And if you're on our email list, we'll be sending that out via email tomorrow, as well as on our Bridging the Gap LinkedIn page. So those are great ways to find the replay as well. All right. Thank you, everyone. Have a great rest of your day, and we'll see you again soon.